All right, boys, so what do we got this week?
Civil War, which will be not quite like the movie. It's not the same story. I mean, there are, less than a dozen superheroes in the Marvel Cinematic Universe right now?
It's fine because, Age of Ultron was just like the movie.
Yeah, such an accurate adaptation.
Panel for panel recreation.
Perfect.
Yeah.
I've got Days of Future Past.
Also, exactly like the movie.
That didn't even revolve around Phoenix or anything.
It's
all fucked up.
My favorite character was Rachel Gray in the film.
There.
2 words, 4 syllables, gentlemen. Daryl Dixon.
Oh, true.
Yeah.
Adaptations can be different. And
Why do you have
cool.
such a big coloring book?
Why is that huge?
You like to color.
Yeah.
What's up, guys? Are you?
Is that an open container in my store?
Damn it!
Again?
So movies, comics, we know they make translations and adaptations, but not everything has to completely follow the storyline.
Oh, of course not.
No, I mean, and Walking Dead is kind of the perfect example of it because you have certain elements that are very present from the book, even the way it starts with Rick waking up in the hospital and stuff like that, but it doesn't need to follow every single plot point. That said, in the show right now, some of the best plot points are the ones that are ripped directly from the book, too.
Very true. I think what they did was really smart, where they took the same characters from the book and the same situations, but they mixed them up in a blender. So if you're a fan of the book, you can enjoy the show with a lot of surprises.
Just like they do with the babies.
If you're a fan of the show and you come in to read the book, you're not going to get the exact same story. You're going to see people that you recognize. I thought that was a really smart way to do it.
I mean, Game of Thrones is exactly the same thing right now because there are certain characters that never appeared in the TV show that were big parts of the books, from what I've been told, because I don't read actual books.
I love people complaining about spoilers for like 15-year-old books.
Whether or not you feel some changes are better and some changes are worse or lost something. Like, the fact is, no matter what, you can't complain about changes just existing. Like, it's a different medium.
That is the biggest departure that he made in Watchmen, where he cut out the whole storyline of the scientists, and therefore you then don't have the giant squid. The change there that they made is that by making the actual fault at the end of the movie to be Dr. Manhattan, that makes a very concrete enemy for everyone to focus on, versus the Alan Moore ending of a nebulous other entity.
Alien.
Yeah.
That's a thing.
So here's what's happening there, and I'm actually someone that is a fan of the film.
I like
Watchmen.
it too.
One of the things that it did is it captured the spirit of what Ozymandias was trying to do, which was blame a higher power that everyone can consolidate under, and therefore the world becomes peaceful. And so what they did there, and what's different about that than The Walking Dead, which is I think a different, really positive thing they've done in adaptation, is The Watchmen stuck to the spirit of what the graphic novel was about, and then did its own thing that made much more sense in the confines of a cinematic feature film. The Walking Dead, what they did is they took a bunch of characters in a situation and put it in the same spot, and then followed a natural narrative based on the tropes and the requirements of its medium to different places. And then when you do that and you follow it in a really organic way, by this time, and I don't know because I'm 67 episodes behind, they're very different places.
And I'm personally not that beholden to ongoing narratives, pieces of work like The Walking Dead that have to come out monthly that you have to then stick to.
Right.
Versus Watchmen, where it's a 12-piece concrete thing. Or let's move on to X-Men: Days of Future Past, which was part of an ongoing narrative, but this story in and of itself,
the prequel, sequel.
Yeah, it was just such a tight 2-issue story, adventure. And then, of course, they followed up with it a bunch. But its story itself,
the giant book you're holding for the 2 issues.
Yeah, I know, right? Yeah. Well,
it's very thick paper.
Marvel hit a gold mine and they mined it to death.
Page per panel.
But that's a specific story.
Drunk.
That's a specific story that you go in and you adapt and translate. So when they use that name for the movie, it brought a lot of baggage to it, both good and bad.
But it also added Blink, because that was totally original to that story.
This is what I'll say to the X-Men feature films.
You didn't see the Phalanx?
The Phalanx Covenant is my favorite, not my favorite.
What?
Get out! Get out! Leave!
I love that.
There's 18 copies of it in those boxes over there. Take one home.
Buy them all.
It is no longer 1995. You can grow up a little bit.
It's okay.
A little bit.
No,
but they did great episodes of the cartoon around the family.
It was a two-part.
They did.
It was a great two-part.
Wally, self-friend love you. Self-friend love you.
Wolverine played an iconic role in that comic, even before the movies. every image you ever saw of Days of Future Past was Wolverine. It wasn't. It wasn't all. But it was him on the wall with all the dead
and the gray hair.
There was so much Wolverine that came out of just those 2 or 3 panels in the whole history of the X-Men. So that played a big part of it. You cannot deny that context of what that book brought.
There was some connectivity, though, with the time travel and do you go back and take out this greater evil? Yeah. There are other movies, and granted, it's one of the ones I love. Age of Ultron has nothing to do with it. Because Age of Ultron in the movies is Ultron's origin story, whereas Age of Ultron in the comics is this alternate reality, and it's so far removed. There really was no reason to call that movie Age of Ultron.
Especially the Age in the movie is a weekend, not even a full weekend, that he's sort of in power.
This is what I will say, though. That was a moment in time where if Age of Ultron didn't come out at exactly the point in time it came out...
The movie or the book?
The movie. Okay. It would not have been called Age of Ultron.
That's
the only reason it was called Age... And I remember I was in San Diego. We were in San Diego when that was announced at the panel. No one was there because who waits in line at panels? But we were at some sort of party and then everyone got... Oh my God, Age of Ultron is announced as... The next Avengers film. And we were all excited. And the reason it was announced as Age of Ultron and everyone went batty insane
because it was like 6 months earlier.
That was the summer of Age of Ultron.
Let's face it, we're talking about a few adaptations. Sometimes you go off course.
Yeah.
Age of Ultron was not an adaptation of anything. It was parts of an adaptation of an origin, parts of an adaptation of a different origin, plus 5 different scenes that were just there to advertise other movies were coming out later. Like, of the different adaptations we're talking about, that is definitely the weakest.
You mean Thor takes a bath?
Yeah, because any problem can be solved by going to a magical sauna.
Okay, so it might have been the weakest so far, but there's definitely one movie that's so much weaker in adaptation, it doesn't even deserve the same title, and that's Wanted. Wanted is nothing like the book.
So what the Wanted movie was able to do, it was able to bridge the thought process of what the comic was, and create an entire new film where you have different really type of characters that did whole different things. James McAvoy was very different than the Eminem archetype that was in the comic book. Angelina Jolie did his other stuff, and Morgan Freeman and all that.
All right, so we're talking about all the stuff that deviated really far. What about the stuff that's done it really, really well?
The animated stuff.
Any of the animated stuff, like that's a hell of a combo pack.
Yeah,
so I'm gonna buy that.
You probably should.
Yeah, but Batman Year One. Look at the animated series
and
the book. They're so well tied together, and I don't know if you could say that one's even derivative of it. I mean, it's telling you that story,
which almost makes it too much of an adaptation to me. Because if you're just following the same stories of comic beat for beat, then part of that's cool. Like I definitely want to hear actors I love say some of these lines. That's cool. But at a certain point, I just think, well, why don't I just reread the comic? Because I have the comic.
You think that, but 85% of the people out there, they're looking to be spoon-fed.
Right.
And I'm with you. I would rather read the comic, but
if you're going to do the exact same thing.
But I love this though. And
they did a good job.
And Dark Knight Returns, I loved it as well.
But what about the ones that we know are gonna change? Like, all of us in this room have read Civil War, or at least parts of it, and it was this big, epic, sprawling war where there's 2 distinct sides of hundreds of people per side.
And then the X-Men just did their own thing.
It's fine. They were just being segregated.
Bishop got up in that Civil War.
Yeah. But what we know for a fact, it's like 5-on-6 or 6-on-6 right now. It's going to be different. But, do we want different? Because I can't picture trying to watch that on screen right now.
And that's the thing, right now. Some of these adaptations, I think you kind of have to either wait for you to have earned that same place in time and space, so to speak, of that universe, or you've just got to jump ahead. So I mean, with the thing with, like, if you're doing the Dark Knight Returns, part of why that battle works for me is that it's the end of Batman's career.
Mm-hmm. Correct.
It's established even in that story that he and Superman were colleagues, so the fact they're fighting now is such an epic thing of, like, we used to be on the same side and now we're not. We have this history and now we have to clash. And that's a much different feeling than we've never met before, let's fight.
You shot your load right out of the gate with it, and it's
so this is
just too bad.
Blew your nerd load.
To bring it back to Civil War, though, this is what's very interesting. I think what we're going to get out of Civil War, and it's very serendipitous that it was the Amazing Spider-Man Civil War book that's sitting right here, right now.
Well, that's because I like it.
That's good.
That was the best part of Civil War for me.
It was good.
I like it.
So bringing it Civil War is that adaptation seems to be in this really great centerpiece against all of these other different things. It is at the same time very different from the source material, and it's simply a name that it was chosen to make sense for the book.
Right.
Also, it takes incredibly specific plot points and fills it into the thing, including Spider-Man. It is this really fantastic nexus point between not giving a shit about the comic and taking the title for its own dramatic purposes, and then being slavish to what the comic is, while then also being spiritual to what the text of the book is all about, while also being true to your own internal movie continuity. Bringing it all back to all the different points that we've talked about, I think Civil War is going to be the perfect example of how you balance all of it.
Plus, it all still has to circle back because Marvel needs to put out Civil War Volume 2.
True.
Team Captain Marvel!
You would be.
Keep drinking.
I love Captain Marvel. I just don't see the need for Civil War 2. We had
There's a movie coming.
Damn it, Wally.
Thank you guys for watching another episode of... What is this bullshit
Another comic show?
It's not another
Teen
Golden
movie.
Eagle show.
Check out Alan on...
Greatest 60 Geeks on SoundCloud and iTunes.
What is some stuff that you edit?
Watch Wildcat Sports on YouTube.
Where are we right now?
We're at Golden Apple Comics, greatest shop in LA, and why don't you subscribe to the Joe on Joe podcast, the greatest G.I. Joe podcast ever.
Since time.
And what do you have to add to the conversation?
You know what? On Earth, as humans, we have the ability to drink.
Damn it, Wally.
Drink more. Please drink more. Out of this cup. Buy this cup. It's very cheap. It's the most beautiful cup. It is Mexico's going to pay for this cup.